walked out of a Palm Beach jail, got into a car, and went to an office, not a halfway house, not a job assigned by the state, his own office. For up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, he left the building that was supposed to keep him away from the public. Then he came back at night, signed a piece of paper, and slept in a cell. If you didn't know the backstory, it would look like a privilege reserved for the rich, because it was. The backstory starts with a teenager and a report that sounded small enough to dismiss a massage, cash, and a powerful man with a reputation. But the investigation that followed would point to something far bigger, dozens of young girls, a pattern, and a network. And yet the outcome was not a federal trial. It was not a public reckoning. It was a deal. A quiet agreement that made a storm vanish. When people talk about the Epstein files, they often imagine a treasure chest, millions of pages that will finally reveal the truth. And yes, there are now millions of pages. The government has even published huge quantities of material under a transparency law, with redactions meant to protect victims. But the uncomfortable truth is simpler. The most important part of the story has never been hidden in a document. It has been hidden in plain sight, inside a system that treats certain people like problems and other people like assets. And to understand how someone like Jeffrey Epstein could be punished and protected at the same time, we have to start with the machine that made that contradiction feel normal.
I am Teresa J. Helm. I'm 39 years old. I am a single mom of two amazing kids. I'm a student midwife. My name is Rachel Benavides. I'm 45 years old. I hail from San Fe, New Mexico. I was a massage therapist for 12 years and I'm currently a registered nurse. My name is Virginia Roberts Jufrey. I'm 36 years old and I'm a mother of three and a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein. I was abused by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, among many others they trafficked me to from the year 2000 till September 2002. I was 22 years old when I met Jeffrey Epstein. I first met Ghislaine Maxwell at the age of 25 years old. I was contracted as a licensed professional massage therapist to go out to Zorro Ranch. I was 16 years old when I was working at Mar-a-Lago. The abuse started almost immediately.
But the floor.
And that was the beginning of a very long, hard time for me for a while.
The first lesson the Epstein case teaches is not only about predators, it's about paperwork. In 2005, local police in Palm Beach began investigating Epstein after the parents of a 14-year-old complained that he paid her for a massage. That single complaint opened a door into a much larger set of allegations that, over time, involved many victims. The details matter, not because they are shocking, but because they are repetitive. Vulnerable teens, money, silence, and recruitment. And then, the part that changes the entire story, negotiation. Federal prosecutors in Florida ultimately entered a non-prosecution agreement, an arrangement that resolved the federal investigation without a federal charge. Even the Department of Justice later described that agreement as unique and reviewed how it was handled, including communication failures that contributed to victims' frustration and confusion.
We did what we did because we wanted to see Epstein go to jail. He needed to go to jail.
Today, Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, former U.S. Attorney in Florida, says accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein wouldn't have served any time in jail over a decade ago if his office hadn't stepped in.
Simply put, the Palm Beach State Attorney's Office was ready to let Epstein walk free.
Wow.
Because of a deal struck in 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty to state charges, including soliciting prostitution from a minor, in exchange for avoiding federal prosecution. He was sentenced to 13 months, forced to register as a sex offender, and make financial restitution with victims, what some critics have called the deal of the century. In that agreement, the U.S. Attorney makes it clear that his office and the FBI were investigating much more serious federal charges, including the ones Epstein has pleaded not guilty to this week in New York, sex trafficking and conspiracy. But Acosta says given the evidence they had at the time in Florida, going to court would have been in words, a roll of the dice.
One of the tough questions in these cases, what is the value of a secured guilty plea with registration versus rolling the dice?
The Labor Secretary also argued that today's juries and judges are more sympathetic to sexual assault victims.
Today's world does not allow some of the victim shaming that could have taken place at trial 12 years ago.
Western League today, the former
That's all
Florida
cool.
State
That's not
Attorney
taking
issued
shit.
a statement saying that Acosta's recollection of the matter is, quote, completely wrong, and that if Acosta was not concerned about the case, then he should have proceeded with federal charges.
Here's what regular people hear when they hear justice. If the conduct is serious, the response is serious. Here's what Epstein's deal demonstrated instead. If the person is valuable enough, justice becomes negotiable. That is why the work release detail matters. In DOJ's internal review, Epstein spent 12 hours a day outside jail, supposedly working at an entity he had just incorporated, in an office connected to one of his attorneys. The review also notes that although the agreement specified 18 months, he only served less than 13. And the human cost of that kind of arrangement is hard to measure because it doesn't show up as a statistic. It shows up as a feeling. You spoke up and the world still made room for him. Which brings us to the next question. Because Epstein's protection wasn't only legal, it was cultural. And to see that cultural reflex up close, we have to leave the private jail door in Florida and step into a very different kind of courtroom. One lit by stage lights and applause.
Don't talking about you with underage girls. People are going back to my past. Okay? That's exactly what they're doing. They're going back to the past. And they're trying to add all of this stuff now to that. To make all the stuff that's going on now feels real to people.
But the past is relevant with you with underage girls.
Absolutely no, it's not.
Why?
Because for one, I beat my case.
So
You can't double jeopardy me like that. It's not fair. It's not fair to nobody. When you beat your case, you beat your case.
R. Kelly was abusive to me, emotionally and physically and verbally.
Okay.
R. Kelly took me in a black room where unspeakable things happened. This is what they're saying about you.
Not true.
These aren't old rumors.
Not true. Whether they're old rumors, new rumors,
Why would they say
future
this about
rumors, not true.
That you have never held anybody against their will.
I don't believe to. Why would I?
Well, I'm
How stupid
You've
would
never
you
held
feel
anyone.
R. Kelly with all I've been through in my way past to hold somebody, let alone 4, 5, 6, 50, you say that. Why, how stupid would I be to do that?
I didn't say
That's
you.
stupid, guys.
I didn't
Is this camera on me?
Yes.
That's stupid. Use your common sense. Don't forget the lies. Forget how you feel about me. Hate me if you want to, love me if you want. But just use your common sense. How stupid would it be for me to, with my crazy past and what I've been through? Oh, right now I just think I'm the monster and hold girls against their will, chain them up in my basement, and don't let them eat, and don't let them out, unless they need some shoes down the street from their uncle. I quit playing. Quit playing. Well, I didn't do this stuff. This is not me. I'm saying about
It's not in my children. It's rich. This is how it's been. Mr. Roberts and then it's first very bad. This is entourage. One is women's allegations of abuse. They were
Oh, that boy R. Kelly was going crazy.
Just horrified to read.
probably the horrific audio and video. Here it is, I'm gonna face the man that violated my daughter.
For years, people spoke about R. Kelly the same way they spoke about Epstein. Not in formal statements, not in official press conferences, but in whispers and jokes and in everybody knows. In 2005, the Boondocks aired an episode called The Trial of R. Kelly. It's a satire about a community watching accusations pile up and then deciding loudly that none of it matters. The episode is funny because it's exaggerated, but it stings because it isn't. It understands something basic about human nature. When we love what someone produces, we
Damn,
are
bro.
bargaining with what they've done. Fame turns denial into a group activity. And in R. Kelly's real-life story, that group activity lasted a long time. In 2008, he was acquitted in a major criminal case. and the scene outside the courthouse included cheering fans like they'd won something.
I'm going to show you something they don't want you to see. Something that will blow this case wide open. This is R. Kelly's NAACP Image Award Certificate of Nomination.
He's gone. He's gone. Did you watch him?
You think they nominate just anyone for this award? You know why he wants to put R. Kelly in jail? Because he's afraid of R. Kelly. Objection! Would you be quiet? I think he's afraid. I think the whole system is afraid of R. Kelly. They're afraid because they see the power for good that this man wields through his music. Yes, they do. They don't want R. Kelly to be free because they don't want you to be free. They don't want me to be free. Maybe R. Kelly did urinate on this woman. But America urinated on R. Kelly. Oh. And if you let them put this man in jail, America will urinate on each and every one of you. Please, people, you saw the tape. The girl testified she was underage. You're not allowed to do that. The little girl. We have a videotape.
Don't tell that to your wife, bitch.
The girl was. Prosecution rests. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, all that needs to be said is this.
Hey! What the hell is wrong with you people? Every famous nigga that gets arrested is not Nelson Mandela. Yes, the government conspires to put a lot of innocent black men in jail on fallacious charges. But R. Kelly is not one of those men. We all know the nigga can sing. But what happened to standards? What happened to bare minimums? You a fan of R. Kelly? You want to help R. Kelly? Then get some counseling for R. Kelly. Introduce him to some older women. He's killed court. But don't pretend like the man is a hero. And stop the damn dances. Act like you got some goddamn sense, people. Please, don't play around here. Whoa. You with the afro. Give him a rest. Get up. Put the music back on. You stressing. I did battle with ignorance today. Ignorance won. I admit that I'm often vexed at the behavior of my own people. Yeah, vexed is a good word. I told you about messing with them white women. You do what you can to help black folks, and they make you wonder why you even bother. But they're our people, and we gotta love them regardless. One thing for sure, though, can't blame this one on the white man. What am I saying? Of course I can't.
Years later, federal prosecutors described a different picture, a pattern sustained by fame, fortune, and enablers, and by people who turned a blind eye. A jury convicted him in 2021, and he was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison in 2022. Now here's the point of the comparison. Epstein and R. Kelly do not come from the same world. One moved among private money and private introductions. The other moved through stadiums, studios, and tour buses, but the defenses sounded eerily similar. Everyone wanted to see the evidence, but not lose what he gave them. In Epstein's world, the crowd wasn't screaming outside a courthouse. The crowd was writing letters, giving introductions, signing checks, arranging meetings, different costumes but the same performance. And once you see that, you start noticing a chilling pattern. Predators don't just have victims, they have audiences. But audiences aren't the only shield. Sometimes the shield is an institution once so big that protecting itself becomes its main job. And to see how that works, we need to step into the places where reputation is treated like a sacred object.
The journalists, you break a story. I mean, you're ahead of everybody else. You put a story out there that no one else has done. Woodward and Bernstein absolutely broke the Watergate story. Seymour Hersh broke the My Lai. And since it was 15 years before the Boston Globe, it's certainly fair to say I broke the Catholic Church story.
It is a scandal that sent shockwaves from Boston to Rome.
The Boston Globe uncovered a massive sex abuse scandal and cover-up within a local Catholic church.
Chicago priest John Gagnon is accused of molesting and raping more than 100 boys, some as young as 4 years old.
He should go to prison, that's what I think.
It's a report that shook the world.
I felt this story had to be told. It was the right time to tell it.
And the Oscar goes to Spotlight.
If you zoom out far enough, Epstein stops looking like a one-off scandal. He starts looking like a familiar chapter in a very old book. The Catholic Church scandal is one of the clearest examples of institutional self-protection becoming a way of life. A major research study found allegations against 4,392 priests and allegations from 10,667 individuals over the study period. That is not a story about one bad actor. That is a story about systems, procedures, and walls. And the most frightening thing about institutional walls is that they don't have to lie loudly. They can simply delay, reassign, handle it internally, turn a crisis into a quiet administrative issue. In many large institutional scandals, it took investigative pressure to force the public conversation forward, like the Boston Globe Spotlight team coverage in 2002 that helped expose the scale and handling of clergy abuse. We see the same shape in the Larry Nassar case.
Some of the world's top gymnasts have accused the FBI of turning a blind eye to reports of sexual abuse, and now they want the agency to pay for it. Simone Biles, Ali Raisman, and Michaela Maroney among the 90 young women who are filing a tort claim directly with the FBI, demanding $1 billion for its mishandling of credible complaints of sexual assault by former USA Gymnastics team doctor Larry Nassar. Those complaints received by the agency in July of 2015. Some of the gymnasts testifying on Capitol Hill last year.
All we needed was one adult to do the right thing. We have been failed, and we deserve answers.
The Justice Department Inspector General found the FBI learned of the accusations against Nassar, but failed to notify university officials and others, which allowed Nassar to continue his abuse for more than a year.
I then told the FBI about Tokyo, the day he gave me a sleeping pill for the plane ride, to then work on me later that night. That evening, I was naked, completely alone, with him on top of me, molesting me for hours. I began crying with
What
memory
the
over the phone,
fuck?
and there was just dead silence. I was so shocked at the agent's silence and disregard for my trauma.
Raisman telling senators it took more than 14 months for FBI agents to contact her after she reported Nassar's abuse.
Nassar found more than 100 new victims to molest.
Oh my.
It was like serving innocent children up to a pedophile.
At the hearing last week, investigators reported that agents doctored paperwork to, quote, hide their dereliction of duty. One agent on the case retired, another was fired. FBI Director Christopher Wray, who was not in charge of the bureau when athletes first went to the FBI about Nassar, apologized to the women.
I'm especially sorry that there were people at the FBI who had their own.
Department's Inspector General found FBI officials failed to respond with urgency, made fundamental errors, and failed to notify the right offices or local authorities, while Nassar continued to have access to athletes. In 2024, DOJ announced a settlement resolving claims that the FBI failed to conduct an adequate investigation. Again, the details differ, but the architecture is the same. There is an allegation, there is an institution, there is a moment when the institution must choose between truth and image, and too often the institution chooses image. This is where Epstein fits. His case was never confined to an island. It unfolded in offices and courtrooms, in private conversations where the cold language of risk management quietly replaced the moral language of right and wrong. And once that becomes clear, another pattern emerges. Protection rarely announces itself as a cover-up. More often, it arrives disguised as an alluring story, a glamorous story, a story that reframes power as performance. Which is why, before we go any further, we need to talk about a singing dress and a president's smile. On May 19, 1962, Marilyn Monroe stepped onto a stage at Madison Square Garden and sang Happy Birthday to President John F. Kennedy. The performance became an icon, the photographs became artifacts, the moment became myth, and almost immediately, the myth did what myths always do. It pushed the uncomfortable questions into the shadows. For decades, rumors swirled about Monroe and JFK. The public debated what happened, how much happened, and what it meant. But what matters for our purposes isn't the scorecard of gossip. It's how the culture treated the rumor. At the time, mainstream media treated presidential private lives as untouchable. Journalists and historians later described a system where certain affairs were quietly understood in elite circles but carefully kept out of public view. As a result, the story never became a serious discussion about power, consent, or imbalance. It became a charming footnote and a pop culture wink. That is how the pattern works. When the powerful are implicated, society doesn't usually erase the story. It domesticates it. It trivializes it. It turns it into background noise. And once a story becomes background noise, it becomes harmless. It becomes shareable. It becomes entertainment.
Now, again, I'm not looking at his politics. I don't know what his politics are. I'm just looking at his behavior. I understand that kind of behavior. I know how to do with them shortcomings. Weed smoking fornicators. I mean, come on now. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Bill Clinton was not the first president to do what he did. Man, let's think back for a minute. Remember a guy named Kennedy? Remember him? He fought Marilyn Monroe. And history doesn't talk about that much. You know why history doesn't talk about that much? Because those two pages of history are stuck together. I seen the tapes. Remember the tapes? We singing on dance at his party, stressing them out. This is my family's here. They did the same thing. But they didn't do it like that. Because the year 2000, he's busier than Kennedy was. He's a busy man. Clinton did that kind of thing the way busy men do it. You know what busy men do? They fuck who's close to them. See how his McClellan was up. It looks like he just stuck his head out the office door. Oh, boy. Top it off, you lie.